You think expensive animation means quality content. You are completely wrong. The anime industry is lying to you about budgets, and it is destroying everything you love about animation. Here is what studios do not want you to know. A single episode can cost $300,000, but the animators drawing every frame make $2 per hour. That money is disappearing somewhere. The truth is darker than you imagine. After researching over 100 hours of industry data, I have uncovered exactly where your money actually goes. This is not about art, passion, or creativity. This is about a system designed to exploit artists. By the end of this video, you will understand why anime looks worse despite costing more, why talented animators quit the industry they love, and why nothing will change without drastic action. Let's start with what studios claim anime episodes cost. The official numbers sound reasonable at first glance. An average anime episode costs $100,000 to $300,000 to produce. A 12-episode season runs around $2 million total. Premium shows like Attack on Titan cost $5 million per season. Demon Slayer episodes can hit $90,000 each. Jujutsu Kaisen's budget reaches $150,000 per episode. These numbers seem huge when you first hear them, but here's where the lie begins. Almost none of that money goes to actual artists. The production committee system controls everything. This is a group of investors who fund anime. They include TV networks, publishers, toy manufacturers, and advertisers. Each company contributes money to the production budget, and in return, they own pieces of the intellectual property. The animation studio itself typically owns under 10%, sometimes as little as 1 or 2% ownership. This means when an anime makes massive profits, the studio that created it barely sees anything. Attack on Titan generated billions in merchandise and streaming revenue, but Studio Mappa got almost none of that money. They received a fixed production fee and nothing more, no matter how successful the show became afterward. Here is how the money actually breaks down. Out of a $2 million season budget, the production committee takes their cut first. Advertising agencies take another massive percentage. TV networks claim their broadcasting fees up front. Publishers take licensing fees for source material rights. By the time money reaches the animation studio, only 13% of total revenue remains. The other 87% goes to committee members. This is why anime is a booming industry, but studios are going bankrupt left and right. In 2021, almost 40% operated at a loss. Despite the industry generating $34 billion globally, most studios cannot even break even on projects. Now let's talk about where that 13% goes. The studio has to pay for everything with that remaining money. Salaries for hundreds of staff members per project, equipment, software licenses, and studio space rental, electricity, insurance, and administrative costs. And they still need to turn a profit to stay in business. This creates an impossible situation for animation studios. They cannot raise prices because committees control the budget. They cannot negotiate better terms without losing future work, so they do the only thing possible. They slash animator wages to survive. Here is what entry-level animators actually make. In-betweeners draw individual frames between key animations. They earn 200 yen per drawing in Japan, 200 yen per drawing, $1.83 per drawing. Each drawing takes about 1 hour to complete properly. So these artists make less than $2 per hour. Japan's minimum wage is $7.34. Animators earn 75% below minimum wage legally, because studios classify them as freelance contractors. This loophole lets studios avoid paying benefits or overtime, no health insurance, no retirement, no job security, just piece rate work that pays poverty wages. A 2024 survey revealed the horrifying reality. Horrifying reality. The median hourly wage for all anime staff was $7.33 per hour, 40% of animators made only $16,000 annually. That is working full-time every single week of the year. The poverty line in Japan is $20,000. Most animators literally live below the poverty line. Literally. Even experienced key animators struggle financially. The average animator in their 20s makes $10,000 yearly. This increases by $10,000 every decade of their career. A 30-year-old might make $20,000. A 40-year-old might reach $30,000. Compare this to American animators making $50,000 to $75,000. Compare that. Japanese animators make 1/5 of that salary for work that requires identical skills and experience. One MAPPA animator went viral for exposing their pay. She worked 10 hours on a 6-second animation scene. The studio paid her $17 total for that work. That is $1.70 per hour. This animator worked on Jujutsu Kaisen, a massively successful show. The show's budget was $150,000 per episode. Budget. But animators got paid starvation wages to create it. Where did that money actually go? Not to the artists creating the art you love, not to the artists. The production committee took most of it before production started. Now here is what makes this system truly evil. Truly evil. Studios exploit passionate young artists who love anime. They know animation fans will work for nothing because they are living their dream of making anime. This creates an endless supply of desperate workers. When one animator quits from exhaustion or poverty, 10 more passionate fans line up to replace them. Studios never have to raise wages or improve conditions because the supply of willing workers never runs out. Character designer Shingo Adachi explained this perfectly. There is a shortage of skilled animators in the industry, so studios hire large pools of passionate freelancers instead. They do not provide benefits or guarantee stable salaries. This saves money in the long run for studios. It is a gross practice that exploits workers systematically, and it helps studios avoid labor regulations entirely. If you are enjoying this investigation, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into industry secrets. Your support helps us expose these hidden truths. Let's talk about the human cost of this system. Animators work brutal hours under impossible deadlines. The average animator works 219 hours a month. That is 34% higher than Japan's national average. Some work 80 to 100 hours per week during crunch. This is physically and mentally destroying talented artists. The New York Times followed animator Mr. Akutsu for months. Despite 8 years of experience and occasional directing work, his monthly income ranged from $1,400 to $3,800. He wanted to work in anime for his entire life, but he faced intense financial pressure to quit. He said that it was impossible to get married and raise a child. This is the reality for most animators in Japan. They must choose between their passion and basic survival. Many leave the field when they start families because supporting children on anime wages is impossible. Industry veteran Ryosuke Hirakamoto quit to work at a nursing home. A lot of people felt value in working on anime they loved. No matter how little they got paid, they were willing. But eventually, even passion cannot sustain you. When you cannot afford food or rent anymore, and when you are working 100 hours per week for nothing, the dream dies and reality crushes you. Mental and physical health collapses under these conditions. Animators report severe anxiety, depression, and burnout. Sleep deprivation becomes chronic during production deadlines. Some animators finish scenes days before episodes air. Core components are changed a week before release. Hokuto Sadamoto apologized on Twitter after brutal deadlines. He wrote that he had done a job that nobody would appreciate. He wrote that he was sorry he could not finish all 250 cuts in 2 weeks. This is the environment passionate artists work in daily. Now let's expose the biggest big lie about anime budgets. Studios and committees claim low budgets explain poor animation. They say raising budgets would solve all quality problems. This is completely false propaganda. Budget size does not determine animation quality at all. Mob Psycho 100 had a relatively modest budget, but it is considered one of the best animated shows ever. The animators had creative freedom and reasonable deadlines. They could experiment with techniques and perfect their craft. Meanwhile, huge budget shows often look terrible. Because the money never reaches the actual animators, it gets eaten by committee members and middlemen. The artists still work under the same brutal conditions, just with slightly nicer equipment in the studio. Here is what actually determines animation quality. Time, talent, and creative freedom matter most. Give skilled animators enough time to work properly. Let them experiment without committee interference. Pay them enough to focus without financial stress. And they will create masterpieces regardless of total budget. But the production committee system prevents all of this. Committees demand maximum output for minimum investment. They set impossible deadlines to maximize their returns. They micromanage creative decisions to protect their investments, and they refuse to let studios retain intellectual property. This creates a vicious cycle of declining quality. Studios rush productions to meet committee demands. Animators work themselves to death for poverty wages. Burnout and turnover destroy institutional knowledge. Young animators never learn proper techniques from veterans because veterans do not have time to teach anymore. They are too busy trying to meet impossible deadlines themselves. A 2024 survey showed this knowledge transfer crisis. Animators under 30 learned mostly through self-study or classrooms. Older animators learned on the job from experienced coworkers. The time and energy to teach others is being depleted. This means the entire industry's skill base is eroding. Future anime will look worse as knowledge disappears. Now let us talk about what studios hide about profit. The production committee system prevents studios from profiting even when shows become massive international hits. Remember, studios own less than 10% of the intellectual property, so merchandise sales do not generate studio income. Streaming deals do not benefit studios directly either. Game licensing, theme park attractions, international distribution rights, all of that money goes to production committee members. The studio that animated the entire show often gets nothing. This is why Studio Ghibli films worked differently. Hayao Miyazaki insisted on owning his film's intellectual property. This let the studio keep profits from their work and allowed them to pay animators actual living wages. Kyoto Animation follows a similar model today. They prefer hiring salary-dependent employees over freelancers. They own significant stakes in their productions when possible. This lets them distribute profits more fairly to artists. But most studios cannot negotiate these terms. Production committees hold all the power in the relationship. If a studio demands better terms, committees drop them and hire a desperate competitor willing to work cheaper. This race to the bottom destroys the entire industry. Here is what streaming services changed and did not change. Netflix, Crunchyroll, and Amazon entered anime production recently. They joined production committees as investing members, becoming part of the existing production model. That brings more money into the industry overall, but it does not fix the fundamental distribution problem. Netflix originals like Cyberpunk Edge Runners had big budgets, but the animation studio still received a fixed production fee. Netflix kept the IP rights and most of the streaming revenue. Animators still worked under brutal conditions, and they were paid wages barely above poverty level. The only real differences were slightly better equipment and maybe a few extra weeks on the schedule. The core exploitation remained completely unchanged. Some companies are trying to break this system. MAPPA invested completely in Chainsaw Man's production. They funded it themselves to own the intellectual property rights. This was incredibly risky for a mid-sized studio. If the show flopped, they would face potential bankruptcy. But they believed owning their work was worth the risk. The show succeeded commercially and critically. MAPPA kept more profits than usual from merchandise, but they still underpaid their animators horrifically. because the studio's profit margins remain razor thin even when they own the intellectual property themselves. This exposes the deeper structural problem. The entire industry's economics are fundamentally broken. Production costs are too high for current revenue models, but committees and middlemen refuse to take less profit, so studios and animators bear all the financial burden. Here's what nobody wants to admit publicly. The anime industry runs on artist exploitation. It is not a sustainable business model long-term. It is a passion tax on people who love animation. They work for nothing because they love the art, not because the business makes economic sense. This exploitation is getting worse, not better. The Japanese government announced support initiatives recently. They want to grow anime to 20 trillion yen by 2033. Prime Minister Kishida emphasized fair revenue distribution, but industry veterans remain deeply skeptical. Those government initiatives do not address production committees. They do not mandate minimum wages for animators. They do not require studios to own their intellectual property. They are empty promises that change nothing fundamental. Meanwhile, animators continue quitting in record numbers. The industry faces a genuine crisis of skilled labor. This is not because people do not want to make anime, but because they literally cannot survive on anime wages. 2 out of 3 anime companies surveyed said they had no plans to raise wages in 2024, despite record industry revenues and global demand. They are choosing profit over sustainability, choosing exploitation over fair compensation, and the entire system will collapse eventually. Here is what this means for you as a viewer. Every anime you watch was created through this exploitation. Your favorite shows were drawn by starving artists. Many worked 100-hour weeks for $2 per hour, while production committees made billions in profit. This is not sustainable and it is not ethical. The quality you love comes from artists sacrificing everything: their health, their relationships, their financial security, all so you can watch beautifully animated stories. And the studios that created them see almost nothing. Now, you might be wondering what can change this. The production committee system is deeply entrenched. It has been the standard model since the 1990s. Changing it requires massive industry-wide transformation. Studios need to unionize and collectively bargain. Animators need to organize and demand living wages. Governments need to enforce minimum wage laws strictly. Streaming services need to fund studios directly instead of joining exploitative production committees. Fans need to support studios that treat artists fairly. Buy merchandise from studios that own their own intellectual property. Subscribe to services that compensate creators properly. Demand transparency about where your money goes. Some studios are making progress on their own. Kyoto Animation and Ufotable retain significant intellectual property ownership. They pay better wages and hire permanent employees. WIT Studio partnered with Netflix for animator training programs. These programs provide financial support for up-and-coming artists. But these are exceptions in a broken system. Most studios cannot negotiate these favorable terms. They are trapped in the production committee model, taking low fees and exploiting their staff to survive. Here is the uncomfortable truth about anime budgets. The money exists to pay animators fairly. A $2 million season budget could support living wages if the production committee system did not extract 87%. If studios owned their own intellectual property, and if animators received royalties from merchandise sales, the industry could sustain itself and pay artists properly. But the current system concentrates wealth at the top. Committee members, advertising agencies, and television networks extract maximum value while contributing minimal creative work. The actual artists creating the content get almost nothing. This is the hidden reality of anime budgets. When you see beautiful animation on screen, remember the person who drew each frame. They worked for hours to create that single second, and they probably earned less than $3 for it. Meanwhile, somewhere, a committee member is buying another yacht from profits generated by that animator's starvation wages. This is the anime industry's dark secret. Beautiful art built on systematic exploitation of talent, record revenues, while studios operate at massive losses. Global expansion, while animators live below poverty lines. Passionate fans funding a system that destroys artists. And nobody with power wants to change anything, because the current system works perfectly for them. Production committees make billions with minimal risk. Studios compete to offer the lowest possible prices. Animators work themselves to death from passion. Fans consume content without questioning the system. Everyone plays their role in perpetuating the exploitation until you understand how deeply broken everything is. Now you know the truth about anime budgets. The money exists, but it is stolen before reaching artists. The production committee system is designed to exploit creators. Studios have almost no negotiating power or profit share. Animators work for wages that violate minimum wage laws. The industry runs on passion and systematic exploitation, and nothing will change without massive structural reform. This is why anime quality is declining despite bigger budgets. This is why talented animators are leaving the industry. This is why studios go bankrupt while producing hits. The system is broken, and everyone knows it. But the people profiting from it refuse to fix anything. So what should you do with this knowledge? Support studios that treat their artists fairly. Buy directly from creators when possible. Demand transparency from streaming services. Push for labor reforms in the animation industry. And never forget the human cost of your entertainment. Every frame was drawn by someone struggling to survive. Someone working 100 hours per week for nothing. Someone who loves anime enough to destroy themselves. That is the real story behind anime budgets. Not the lies studios tell about production costs. This is the truth about where your money actually goes and why the people creating anime barely survive.